There it is. It's official. We have been told we are recording in progress. And hey, there's Kay. Hi, Kay. So, hey guys, thanks for jumping on and taking a little bit of time out of your day to come hang out with Sean and I. This is part 3 in our series on the emotions. We've got 7 more to go. I promise you after tonight, we're going to talk about a good emotion next month. Promise. But anyway, tonight we're going to talk about being overwhelmed. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Angelo. I've been involved with essential oils. Elaine and I got involved probably 10 years ago. We've been pretty active in sharing and spreading this ever since we pretty much got started. My first dose with lemon and peppermint helped me with my allergies, and I had some acid reflux things going on, and I realized that, hey, the oils are really helping with this. So that's kind of how I got my niche into this. Prior to doing all the oils, well, actually was consistent with it. I'm also a paramedic. I teach paramedics and EMTs up at Harrisburg Area Community College. I also teach CPR, and we have the oil business out of our home. So that keeps us pretty busy nowadays. So with that being said, Sean, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself as I share my screen and get the slideshow up.
Sounds great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm really glad to see we have, 14 people here tonight, and we have a few in the peanut gallery with Elaine. That's awesome. My name is Sean Page, for those of you who don't know me. I met Angelo teaching at HAC, and I had some issues, and he and another colleague of ours kind of ganged up on me in the parking lot in 2015. And I will tell you, I was very, very, very skeptical. And Angelo knows me well enough that I just don't jump into things, but I started seeing good things happening. And with that, branched out, and I was really honored when he asked me to come on board and to help present this. As you can see by credentialing, I do have a Master of Science in Nursing. I am a family nurse practitioner. And I have, over the past year and a half, been working on the energetic side of things, similar to what Lauren does, but different. So in addition, I have some other hats that I wear in emergency management. So I think this is a really important topic, because coming off of the pandemic, we definitely are seeing a lot of this. Angelo and I had a conversation the other night about how the mental health impact is occurring. And it's not just occurring in the youth, but it's also in the adult population. Hopefully, when we're done tonight, you won't be feeling overwhelmed, but we do have a lot of information as always. All right, Angelo, I don't have control yet of the slides. So that's somewhere on the pull down menu up at the top where you're scrolling, and it was off to the side somewhere. It's where the annotate and whatnot. It's to the far right, if I remember the control.
Yeah, I'm looking at the more, and it's not giving me.
All right.
All right, so I will just do it from here.
Yeah, we'll just tell one another back.
We'll make it up as we go along. That's what we do best.
Yep. So, Angelo, this is your stick.
Yeah, just as a reminder, as we talk about this stuff, we as wellness advocates of doTERRA, we're issuing this little declaration, right? It is not our intent, nor are we in any way, shape, or form attempting to diagnose, cure, advise, or prescribe for any kind of human disease, ailment, injury, infirmity, deformity, pain, or any other condition, physical or mental, real or imaginary, by any means or instrumentality. We are simply just disseminating some information that we have found extremely useful and beneficial to us and our families, and we are wanting to just share that information with you.
All right. So being overwhelmed, unfortunately, our brains are wired to be 70 to 80% negative, and the balance is positive. And most people, when you say, why are you feeling overwhelmed? They start giving you this really long laundry list of negative things. And we listed some of the ones that I did some polling, and these were the most common themes that, and I asked about 20, 25 different people. The other thing is that sometimes positive things, such as you can see here, marriage, graduation, or being that perfectionist, can create a sense of overwhelming sensations. So again, we're going to, as we have in the past, we're going to talk about some neuroanatomy physiology stuff, and then get into what we can do about this. So Angelo, how about if we move on? So there are two schools of thought. And the first one is the too much too soon. Think of this as the straw that breaks the camel's back. We're very familiar with that. And if you go back on about page 9 of how the emotions are formed in that first presentation we did, we talked about how the emotion comes in. So the brain is being bombarded with sensory input. And with that, it starts putting it through its various filters, and eventually an emotion is assigned. Now, there are some things with the input that comes in. Every input comes in, gets a assigned emotion. Some of them, however, are so insignificant, you aren't consciously aware of this. However, there are other things that are more significant, and therefore you do become consciously aware. And that's what's happening here. We get so overtaxed. And the other thing is that you may be bombarded with so many things. Now, they may be separate individual things, but it's kind of like putting bricks in a wheelbarrow. You put too many in, you can't lift the wheelbarrow anymore. And that's the mentality here. Now, the American Psychological Association kind of looks at this as an adjustment disorder with anxiety. Now, their interpretation is a persistent, maladaptive, emotional, or behavioral reaction within several months of an identifiable stressful event or change in a person's life. That's how they define an adjustment disorder, which has been tried and true over many, many years. Most of this tends to be from an anxiety aspect. Johns Hopkins University and their psych division says they have also noticed with some of their overwhelmed patients, they have some depressive mentalities or behaviors and traits that they've discussed. And that was last month, Angelo?
Last month.
Yeah, last month. So we need to be aware of that concept. And the other thing is that remember the amygdala, which is down in that primitive brain, the bottom part of our brain, is constantly looking for threats, all right? It's always looking for threats because its goal is if it sees a threat, whether it's real or imaginary, it's going to set up that response system so that we can defend and protect ourselves. However, the amygdala, as good as it is, sometimes starts poking in corners where it shouldn't be, and sometimes creates drama for us that does not need to be created. And this is one of the thought process with this adjustment disorder with anxiety. So next slide, please. So again, we have these neurotransmitters, and there are 4 main ones that have been identified with being overwhelmed. The first one is serotonin. And as you can see on the slide here, this is our deals a lot with our happiness. All right. So when we start to be so overwhelmed, our level of happiness and pleasure starts to decrease, which also then leads into a decrease in dopamine levels, which is the pleasure hormone and neurotransmitter. And the brain is trying to get peace and calm in us. The problem is when it becomes overwhelmed, the brain says, I need to start preserving my resources. And so it stops releasing out GABA, which is our calming hormone. On the flip side of thing, one of the main neurotransmitters that makes these messages go back and forth across the brain is acetylcholine. And as you can see, it's also important or tied into learning processes. And one of the things that can happen is the brain is always learning how to overcome and adapt. Now, if we have a decrease in acetylcholine, then we're not going to overcome and adapt very well. And this is one of the thinking patterns from some of the scholars that are attribute for the amygdala to start running away and creating more drama for ourselves. So that's a real 10,000-foot view. Again, we've tried to explain this a little bit more in the handout. So again, I'm going to refer you to that so that we can get everything accomplished. Angelo. All right. So as we said, the APA is viewing this as an anxiety disorder. And in some severe cases, it actually becomes an adjustment disorder, as we've talked about earlier. So what is being overwhelmed? How do I know that I'm overwhelmed? So there are three basic focuses or camps that we have. The first is our mood. And if you look at this list, it's like, well, yeah, some of these make sense. You know, if I'm getting overwhelmed, I'm probably not that easygoing person that I'm known to be. And we start seeing the mood swings. All right, sure. But that unusual calm, think of this as the brain is in gear, it's in neutral, but it's revving up. So in the background, all right, again, that amygdala, which is getting off that fight or flight response, trying to protect and adapt to this, it's revving things up, but the rest of the brain is saying, can't handle this anymore. And so it starts shutting things down. So you may see this unusual calm. You may be things that normally roll off your back, just all of a sudden it's like, and you become super sensitive. Or things that normally don't startle you, you become super startled about. That ambivalence. This is where we have coexisting feelings of two emotions, and they typically are those dipolar opposites, such as love and hate. All right. For you that are still working, you may really enjoy your job, but you hate going because there's something there, whether it's a task that you have to do, or there may be a coworker that just really makes it an unbearable situation. Some people start to become numb about everything. And so we don't affect or start to elicit emotions. And emotional coloring, this was really interesting to me. And this is where we have one emotion that is being exhibited, but it's inappropriate for the situation. And the example that came up is, all of a sudden, I feel so sad when there's a very pleasant event, okay? So we have those. Now, on the mental side of things, it kind of makes sense that, well, if my brain is trying to process all this information and it's revved up, but it's not in the proper gear, yeah, of course I'm going to have some mental focus loss, or I start forgetting things. And with that, it makes sense that we're going to start seeing increasing in mistakes. Some people start engaging in risky behaviors, and that can lead into social habiting changes. Some of this may be, these social habit changes may be simply becoming more annoyed and seeking withdrawal. The other thing that we start to see is as we talked about in anxiety and depression, we tend to have a more negative self-talk and that we're not good enough for anything. Now, the brain at the same point in time is trying to say, hey, I'm this great person. I'm going to fix this. And so you start taking on more tasks than what you can absolutely handle. And that's that inability to say no. And it sets up this very, very vicious cycle, because now you've assumed so much that you're not going to win. So you set yourself up for a failure. The other ones are pretty much self-explanatory there. We're going to start avoiding things. And over time, nothing really stimulates you to want to do anything, so becoming unmotivated. And we talked about the overextended already. Next slide, please. Thanks. So think about it from the physical standpoint, all right? So many of these, if we look at, we can control these. We can control what we eat. And there are people that are stress eaters. And when they stress eat, they either increase the amount of food that they eat or they stop eating altogether. Both of these are bad because we need good nutrition. And oftentimes when we start increasing our intake, it tends not to be of good nutritious food. It tends to be that junk food. We start to sleep less, all right? It may be because in the middle of the night, we wake up and it's just ruminating around and just bombarding us that we have this fragmented sleep. Sleep is significantly tied into our immune system. And if we don't rest and repair, the immune system can't keep us healthy. And so therefore, as the last point of this slide is, we often see ourselves getting sicker. So if we have already pre-existing conditions, they may exacerbate or get worse. Or all of a sudden, in the middle of summer, why do I have the common cold going on? We see tension headaches. Some people will say, hey, are you okay? You kind of look dazed or confused. And it's because your brain is working, but the other parts of the brain, particularly that frontal cortex area.
Come on, girl. Here. Come on, girl. Come on.
Robin, can I get you to mute your mic for me, please?
So
I'm so sorry.
That prefrontal cortex that kind of gives that outward projection of our emotions gets blunted. So we have that going on. Now, at the same point in time, remember that amygdala is revving things up. And so therefore, as we've talked before, we're going to start to see that increase in blood pressure. We're going to see that increase in respiratory rate. We're going to see the increase in pulse rate. It's going to cause us to start breaking out into sweats. So those physiological things are coming into play. Angelo, you're up.
All right. So here's where we started diving into and figuring out what things we have at our fingertips when it comes to the oils, when it comes to which oil we want to do. And I'm going to remind you this every time. What Elaine and I have figured out is that when you're overwhelmed, when you're depressed, when you're angry, that's not the time to figure out which oil is you want to use. You need to have that research done before, so that when you're in that moment, you can just be able to reach for that oil. Bearing in mind at the same time, there is no wrong oil, right? Because every oil will provide you some type of benefit, may not be the exact benefit you're looking for, but any oil you use is going to be better than no oil at all. So as I was pulling out the emotions wheel here, and we looked at overwhelmed, and I was looking at some information for it, and you can see where the oils that it recommends. But one of the things that pointed out right from the get-go was, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you need to identify why you're feeling overwhelmed, or what is it that's making you feel overwhelmed. And these are some examples that are here. And you can see the oils that are associated with that. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. But knowing why you're feeling overwhelmed is really the first step in getting out of that mode and making that transition, right? So that's the most important part. when we start looking at some of the oils specifically, one of the first ones that pops up, believe it or not, is DigestZen, because think about what it does. It's good for our, what I call intestinal distress. When we don't eat right or eat too much or eat too little, it's good for then, right? But oftentimes what we see with people who are having significant feelings of overwhelmingness, they have intestinal issues or stomach issues. So naturally, DigestZen would be one of those go-to oils that would help alleviate some of those symptoms, right? It supports the body and the spirits, and it helps assimilating new information and events, right? It helps with that processing. So that's one of the first oils that are good to go to. Another one is past tense. This is a fantastic blend because this helps release not only stress, but also some emotional tension, right? Oftentimes when we have that emotional tension, it may come in the form of a headache. This is a good oil for that, right? So one thing I did want to point out to this oil is we're used to having, most of us that have been around for a while used to know when we had past tense come in a roller ball. It doesn't come in a roller ball anymore. It comes in a 15 milliliter roller bottle. The reason being is because it has wintergreen in the blend, they had to put a locking cap on it just to be in accordance with what FDA wanted. So they changed the bottle, but it's the same exact composition of oils and blend. So oftentimes what people will do is when they get the past tense is they'll dump it into a 10 milliliter roller ball. Another way you can make it last a little bit longer is take your 15 milliliter bottle, put 5 milliliters in a roller ball, top that off with fractionated coconut oil. Now you got an oil that's going to last 3 times longer. So those are just some side notes there. But when using this oil is going to help teach the body how to calm and how to relax a little bit. It can help with some of the severe stress, like I talked about earlier. It can also help regain that equilibrium when we're feeling a little bit of overwork, burnout, we got that fatigue going on, we're feeling a little bit off, and this can help bring that equilibrium back in line. It actually helps foster feelings of appreciation. It invites the balance and remind us that there's still a lot to be grateful for. Yes, we're going to have the trials and tribulations. We're going to have the opposition and setbacks, but we're always going to have something to look forward to. Midnight Forest, I found this one to be fascinating. This one, it's a blend of fir oils. You can see what the blend is there, and it helps on so many different levels. It's with everything being thrown at us and from every direction and every day, it's just this constant onslaught that we have to get and we have to keep processing, right? Well, this blend kind of feels like it wraps you in a blanket, and it's just kind of a little like energetic security, right? What's fascinating about this is because of the oils that are go into this and blending it. There was a study done in Italy in I think it was 2020, 2019, I forget, 2020, 2019. They talked about forest bathing and how good that is for just walking into the woods with all the different pines and all the different firs and the alpha pinene and just the different constituents that we take and just take a deep breath in, and how cathartic it is and actually how grounding it is. And it kind of makes you, kind of brings you back to earth, so to speak. If you want to experience what forest bathing is like, you can simply just pick this bottle up, take the top off, and start huffing it. Put it in a diffuser, blend it, put it in a diffuser and have it diffusing during the day. Take a moment to take some really good deep breaths in, and it will really help kind of just ground you and kind of recenter, refocus you. Tangerine was another one. When we're thinking about being overwhelmed, um, we think about, we have this loss of spontaneity, and this is the oil for spontaneity. This is when we're feeling overburdened and we just have like way too much responsibility. When the work and the duty and all of that, we get to start, have this overwhelming feeling come over us, this burden. It kind of sucks the energy right out of us, and we don't have the drive or the desire. This is going to kind of pick you back up a little bit. And think about this. This is one of those citrus oils. That citrus oils are always mood enhancing oils. So these are the ones that are going to kind of get you up out of that rut a little bit. And it's actually going to help start with energy flowing through the heart and turn that into physical manifestation. So it's going to give you that little bit of pick me up, and you're going to go, okay, wait a minute, I got this. Let me continue on. And of course, I always throw in a kids blend in there too, because if we're feeling overwhelmed, you just imagine how the kids are feeling these days. But sometimes with this world full of distractions and competing priorities, kids have a really hard time staying focused. And when they do focus, we want to make sure that they're focusing on the right thing. So we want to give them the ability to be able to kind of differentiate between knowledge of things that build them up versus the knowledge that is actually kind of tearing them down a little bit. And this oil is really good for that. It really just helps promote the calm and the focus of the mind. And again, when you're having that hard time concentrating or handling any kind of transition, this might be a good oil for the kid to grab.
Annie. Hi.
Some of the other oils you can consider using for this, Anchor. Anchor is the steadying oil. This is one of the yoga oils. This is kind of like an inward and outward steadiness. Whenever you're kind of experiencing a little bit of upheaval or a little bit of instability, this kind of reminds us that separateness and uncertainty and concealment are symptoms of fear, and they're not solutions. So we need to like step away from that. And this Anchor oil is going to help you with that. Douglas fir, I thought this was a little fascinating. This is the generational wisdom. How often do we think, or were we raised where we have some traditions that maybe we're not okay with those traditions? But this is what was handed down from our other family members. It reminds us that the valuable wisdom can be obtained by learning from the past, especially from the older and the wiser and those more experienced folks. But it kind of helps us tap into that. Lemon oil, citrus oil, there it is, right? We know that this is going to help us stay engaged. It's going to help us stay focused. We're going to be mentally present by focusing on one thing at a time. Sometimes that's just that simple. We need to figure out what is that one thing we need to focus on. Petitgrain I thought was interesting because oftentimes I know a lot of guys don't like to use essential oils. It smells frou-frou-y, or just like the oils aren't my thing. Petitgrain is a wonderful oil because we actually refer to this one as the man's lavender, because it has very similar constituents to the lavender oil. But you can see on the emotional side of this, it invites you to choose to honor the good and what was inherited from your family, and also make a path that's a little bit lighter for those that are going to follow behind you, right? It is, again, really connected with the ancestry part of our feelings and our emotions. Sandalwood, it can be either the Hawaiian or the Indian sandalwood, either one. But we look at that oil as kind of like a sacred devotion. If you're having that moment where you're not able to calm down, and you need to calm down, and you need to refocus, you need to reground yourself, this is another really good oil to use. Take a nice deep breath and get a good sense of that smell. It actually helps the heart and the mind to slow down a little bit. And it raises the consciousness level of yourselves, and it kind of helps you re-engage. So these are just a handful of oils that I thought were pretty good a selection of, pretty much in anybody's toolbox, if you will. But if you really want to experience like that forest bathing I talked about, you get that midnight forest, because that is a phenomenal oil.
Speaking of that oil, Angelo, there's a question. Is that still available?
No, unfortunately, that was a limited time offer. I'm really hoping that they do something with that oil come Father's Day in June, with making that oil available somehow, way, shape, or form. If it's an oil that you like, or if it's an oil you think you like, call customer service, tell them you want that for the Father's Day.
All right. Okay, so affirmations, we've talked about them before, and I did a little bit more digging with this, and Angelo and I had a long discussion about this, but this is actually relatively new science, I guess is the word here, that there was a researcher by the name of Claude Steele that stumbled upon this in the 1980s. And he found out that doing these self-affirmations reduces threats to our inner self-image. So anything that you say and you think about yourselves essentially matters, because if your brain, whether you're saying it inside in your inner voice or you're saying it out loud, your brain processes that as, oh, this must be true. So again, taking these affirmations, and here are some that Angelo found that were, I forget the exact words you said earlier today about these.
Yeah, I can't remember what I said at that point either.
Timers.
But what as I was digging up some information on affirmations, particularly focusing on being overwhelmed, Elaine fell in love with the number 4 one there, where you cannot control what you're feeling right now, but I can control my next thought. I will pause and make this a positive one. That's what you were just talking about, Sean, about that shifting of the mindset and taking that negative energy and kind of turn it into something positive. I'm a fan of number 5. As much as it feels like I'm experiencing a setback, there really is only one direction I move in, and that is always forward. Now, some of you may have always, one of my common token lines is, whenever we fail, we know we always fail forward, because we've always learned something. We may not have gotten the results that we were looking for, but we learned something from that, and then we're going to tuck that under our belt and continue to move forward.
Yeah, for me, as I'm looking at that, number 3 probably would be, because I am very reluctant to ask for help.
Most of us are, and that's and I'm guilty of that as just as much as anybody else.
And one of the things with cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectic behavioral therapy is they talk about the power of 3, so that when we do these, we need to read or say them with intention. So I'm going to pick on number 3, since it's about the shortest one. I don't have to do everything. I'm allowed to ask for help. You're supposed to say that 3 times, but that doesn't, saying it that fast, the brain isn't processing it. We need to slow it down and say it with meaning. I don't have to do everything. I am allowed to ask for help. That's the pace. It almost needs to become mantra-like. And that's one of the things that makes these affirmations so powerful. I've been building a tribe internationally. I'm chatting with a gentleman down in Cabo, which I believe is what, Brazil?
Geography.
It's somewhere, yeah, down south. But he put out a daily dare of, what is your favorite affirmation? And I gave one. He says, oh my God, I'm stealing that. I'm using that. But it's what hit me right at that point in time. And the other thing is that as your day goes on, and from day to day, you may find out that you switch amongst this list. And these aren't the only ones available. You can go out and Google affirmations and type in whatever you're feeling, and it'll bring up pages and pages of affirmations. And Angela, I'm sure you found that out as you were doing this research.
Yeah, this is such a small portion of the list that
Absolutely
we pulled together.
All right. So I think we're moving on to gratitude.
Yep.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I'm very much a skeptic. Probably because I come from a biochemistry background. So you have to prove it to me. And my psychologist friend, Ben, and I were talking about this, and I was in a little bit of a rut. And he says, do you practice gratitude? And I says, what's that? And he told me, well, you say 3 things that you're thankful for. It's going to make you feel better. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, right, Ben. I'm sorry, there's no science here. Well, I got proven wrong. So I started doing this, and I found it a challenge. The first couple of days were easy. And I chose the low picking fruit, as Angela likes to say. And then it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to repeat things, and then have to reach up a little bit higher in that tree to find something to be thankful for. So yes, it was challenging, but the more I did it, the easier it became. And I did notice a shift in my mentality. So I'm really thankful that Ben gave that on to me. But if you take a look, overall, the benefits is we're supposed to be feeling better over time. And it doesn't have to be a monstrous thing such as, oh, I'm applying to Harvard and I got in. All right. It can be something as simple as I need to make it through this green light, and it happens. And so I'm thankful that I got through this green light. So the other thing is again, the cognitive and the dialectical behavioral therapies, again, repeating these things 3 times. Now, instead of saying the same thing 3 times, find 3 different things that you're grateful for, and that will help you. In the notes, we talk about how to set up this practice. And at first, it is going to be very regimented, and it's going to be, oh my God, you know, do I have to do this? But I will tell you, taking this seriously and putting time into doing it, it works. The recommendation is to do this first thing in the morning after you wake up, and you thank your higher power that, yes, I'm alive and I'm going to have an awesome day. But reflect on the previous 24 hours and find 3 things. Over time, you'll be finding yourself giving yourself thanks for certain things, like today, coming home in traffic. I knew I had to get home and do some other things. And I was very thankful that every place that I had a traffic light, it stayed green for me. And I just said out loud as I was driving at my other appointment after I talked to you, Angelo, is I am so thankful that those lights stayed green. Let's see. Yeah, again, it can be the most insignificant thing, but sometimes you have to dig down for that, because I'm not a gambler, but I bet if I started to have you identify something, if you're stuck and you find something that's insignificant and you say it and you truly feel that you're thankful for that situation, for happening, as insignificant it is, you're going to start to feel better. All right, the big one.
The big one.
The big one. So emotional freedom technique is the formal name. Most people refer to it as tapping. Now, it is a neat combination, and depending on where you read, you will see records saying that this was developed in the 1960s. Some will say that it occurred in the 1980s, and others will say that it came about in the 1990s. I don't care. It works. All right. That's what is so impressive. So what emotional freedom technique is we have these statements, and we really should say them out loud. Again, the reason being is if you verbalize it out loud, it forces your ears to hear it and forces that processing. Yes, you could say it internally, but there are some scholars out there that say it does not have the same benefit or same effect. However, if you're in public and you need to do this, say it internally, all right? Because you're going to be airing out your dirty laundry here. So I'm okay with that. There are two big schools that I tend to follow. The one where I got my original training from is through EFT International. Unfortunately, I stumbled upon them during the COVID pandemic, and they weren't able to, they didn't have a program in place to offer certification, but I'm going to pursue that. The other one that also has an app is the Tapping Solution. It's a family business, so to speak, through Ortner's. Nick Ortner, Jessica Ortner, and I think Nick, Jessica, and I forget the other one that's in that family. But they've developed an app. There's some that you can get on the free version, but if you buy the subscription, and I think it's like $8 a year, it expands the options out to over 400. I was counting when I was putting this together. Now, there is a whole separate handout, and Angelo, thank you for that nod on your critique of that. I really appreciate that. But we need to first sit down, and I'm going to go through this rather quickly. The notes are there. There are some video links that you can see there. If you have any other questions, if it's still mind-boggling, please reach back out to me. But you need to identify what is the issue, all right? And it may be, I'm angry right now, I'm depressed, I'm anxious about something, I'm just not feeling right. And sometimes it is very vague. And so we're going to start tapping with the side of our hand with 2 or 3 fingers, and we're going to put some pressure there, because not only are we telling the brain by what we say, it's okay, chill out, but as we hit these various points that are identified in the diagram to the left, it stimulates the meridian points, which also tells the parasympathetic nervous system, hey, kick it up a notch. We need to push down that fight or flight response, which is the sympathetic nervous system. So you're going to have and figure out how intense of an emotion this is that you're having. And 0, it's totally gone. 10, it's so massive, it's essentially crippling your life. All right, and there's a scale, and Angela, I forget, did I spell that out in the handout?
You did, yes.
I did. I thought I did. So rate yourself. And then you're going to do your setup statement. And this is where we tap the side of the hand, sometimes called the karate chop point. And this is stating the outline problem. So I'm feeling this at this point in time. And there's another phrase that I really like adding in there, though I don't know why I'm holding on to this. I want to seek this. Be specific. That's the other thing when you're doing your setups, is be specific. If you're unsure, you can go generic, but if the more you're specific, the quicker we can get to that resolution. Now, as the handout talks, you're going to start moving. Now, this is where EFT International versus Ortner's tapping solutions differ. The bottom line is, do you start at the top of the head, all right, where your crown is, and then come down through the points, or do you start at the top of the eyes, work down, and then finish up the head? I don't care. EFT, they start at the head and work down. Tapping starts at the eyes, at the eyebrow point, comes to the side of the eyes, underneath the eyes, nose, under the chin, collarbone, and then underneath the armpits, finishes up at the head. As long as you are consistent, that's the other thing. Now, the other thing is that before you start a round, make sure you take in a good, deep, cleansing parasympathetic breath. What does that mean? Is bring air in through your nose, fill up the chest and belly as full as it can, and slowly allow that out passively, right? And it's very similar to box breathing that we talked before. From there, we're going to start tapping, and each round, we're going to change the verbiage a little bit as we move through. For most cases, 3 rounds of doing this is enough to help. If after the 3 rounds, take a collection. How am I feeling? Well, I only went from a 10 to a 9. We need to do some more tapping, all right? Now, this was originally designed for emotional issues, and I had a friend who has sustained an injury, and when they reach certain ways, it creates issues. And it's like, I just wonder. So I gave her the handout and I said, here, try this. She got into a flare one day, and she rated on the pain scale of 0 to 10. She rated it a 6. And by the time she was done, she rated it a 3. Okay. Setting up for one of my roles in emergency management, I tweaked my back and I got very stiff and it hurt. So I found a corner and I started tapping. Just 1 round was enough to get me that. Was I still a little stiff? Yes, but the pain was gone. And so I could continue through my night. So have I mentioned that tapping works? If not, shame on me. So yeah, I see some benefit as far as physical pain as well as the emotional pain. Angela, anything else that you think I need to?
No, I think people just have to look at the handout that you put together. That is very descriptive as to what you're supposed to say and where you should be doing the tapping and the length of time and all that. That's a really good resource for them to use. I think it's pretty solid. And again, if you have any questions after looking at that, just go ahead and reach out to Sean.
Yeah, please do. Next slide. So as we come down, and these are 3 good articles, but I kind of pulled like out the top 5 for me. First, and Angelo said this, and I alluded to it beginning, is you need to identify what was that straw that broke your back, okay? And sometimes what you need to do is reorient yourself to see or change that perspective so that you can get a better handle. Because sometimes looking at it from a different perspective, you can realize that it is much more manageable than what it's being made out to. And sometimes in order to have that happen, you have to walk away, all right? Angela and I went through this issue the other day with me when I lost my keys, and I was getting a little frantic, but Angela could not have called me at a better time. And just by sitting down and changing where I was sitting, I was able to see my keys. Even though I tore my desk apart, changing my perspective is what happened. And quickly, that overwhelming sensation disappeared. Many of us have a perfectionism attitude. And so sometimes you have to know when good is good enough. And you may have to readjust your assumptions on things. So reprioritization comes into play here. The other thing is this chews up energy. All right. Anytime you're ramping up that sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight, and the amygdala is just keeping things going. All right. It likes to stir the pot, so to speak. it chews up lots of energy. We need to learn how to manage this. Okay. We need to make sure that we're getting adequate enough sleep. We're eating nutritious meals. We're doing something fun for ourselves. The other thing that I found very interesting, and Angela and I talked at length about this, is sometimes taking a break and start to clean. And it's like, why does this work? First of all, it's a mindless activity. So our brain, yeah, you got to think a little bit about things, but you're shifting, helping to shift that perspective. You're giving your brain a break and thinking about something else. The other thing is that you have to be active when you're cleaning, unless you use a Roomba. All right, that doesn't count then. Watching the Roomba run around does not count. You need to push that vacuum. But it's also burning up that calories and working off that excess energy. Yes, I know I said preserve your energy, but you have all this tension in you. Large muscle movements does help. And another article that tied into this was, if you pick 27 things up and put them down, whether you're picking them up, putting them down, or moving them, or better yet, if it's clutter, get it out. All right, so it's using some feng shui properties, also helps. That one was really mind-blowing to me. And we're going to talk more about mindfulness, but again, what is it that helps us get outside of our bodies to look and change that perspective, whether it be Qigong, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditative practices, whether it's deep breathing? Something has to change here, and to allow us to put the brain into gear and get it out of that neutral, just revving. That's what I have for you. Angela?
That's a wrap. That I think was phenomenal. Lots and lots of good information. So I unfortunately wasn't able to look at the comments as because I had to share my screen. So now I'm going to get to that part. And if you guys have questions, unmute your mic and ask away, because that was a lot of stuff that was covered. And I'm sure you guys got some questions. So
Cabo, Mexico. Thank you, Gretchen.
I have a quick question. And Angela, I think I might have asked this before, so if I did, you'll understand when I ask the question. As you know, I've been dealing with a great deal of loss in the last 12 months, and I'm finding that I'm having major memory issues from the grief, I think, and the trauma of it all. Do you think that the memory will come back, or is that just a way of my body protecting me from feeling things?
Sean, I'm going to volley that over to you.
I kind of figured. So that's fine. So right now, your brain is pushed that down, and yes, you are trying to protect yourself. As you go through that grieving process, and it may be something very simple and rather stupid that triggers something that brings this back up. And until you process through all of those levels, yeah, you may have some absences in your memory. The one thing that we're finding out is, and it's really hot press right now, is getting into doing the inner work is one of the big terms. But dealing with that trauma emotion and processing it through. Don't rush it, because if you force it too soon and your brain's not ready to handle all of it, it can have some bad effects. These essential oils will help, because it will allow the brain to start realizing, oh, it's okay. Getting into some of those mindful practices. I know for myself, working with some of the meditative work that I've done, it's opened up some enlightenment for me. And I'm, had I not had that rest period and prepping my body for that, I probably would not be doing well with it now. So it is not as much as we want snap of the finger type recovery, we have to take our time with that. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you very much.
My pleasure. And again, sorry for the loss there. Leah, I really liked your one affirmation. I am in the right place at the right time, connecting with the right people and learning the next lesson. I really like that one. Angela, we need to copy and transmit that to everybody then, please.
Yeah. Yeah. My problem is my chat starts at 7:23. So
Okay. We have other technology to capture that.
all right. So,
Got it.
all right, fantastic.
I know the only thing that I always like to do is the 2 oils that everybody's been suggesting, which is breathe, and I'm trying to think the other one. Sorry for the pronunciation, the H word.
Helichrysum.
Yeah, I think that's what I've been using too, but I've been using a lot of breathe better than helichrysum. I use both. And I might use it a whole lot tonight, maybe, because for the past couple weeks, or like last month and also this month, I've been also dealing with a lot of deaths lately. Those of you that don't know me and my background, I am actually a volunteer firefighter, fire police, whatever you want to call it, and I've been dealing with a lot of deaths lately. Brotherhood, sisterhood is what most of all we always say. So I mean, the only thing I normally like to use a lot more is breathe. I mean, I like to smell the other oils, but most likely I'm more comfortable with all of them. But most likely I think my key one would be breathe, but I like using the other one too.
Yeah, breathe has been extremely helpful with dealing with grief. That is just reading some of the emotional aspects of it. It's pretty good oil for that type of situation.
Yep. Even though if you're just opening the cap or put it in a diffuser.
Yep. Either way.
Like even if I take a quick whiff, I'll definitely just open a cap and just take a whiff real quick.
Oh, and again, that's something we've talked about, how important our olfactory system is in tying in to all this emotional processing. So thank you for sharing that. Lorraine, you asked for a demonstration. It does not transmit very well on Zoom. So in the notes, there is a link on the tapping solutions where it shows a video of them walking through that. If you don't like that one, I have another link I can share with you. But that's why we chose not to do a demo tonight. It just doesn't do well with the Zoom.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
And I changed my name.
I'm sorry.
I'm like Lorraine. Who?
Lorraine, we got to go back and
I'm in
change
trouble.
for you.
Am I in trouble? Sorry, family joke.
I didn't know who he was talking to about when we said that either. So
Took me a minute.
No, I knew.
so. What do you think, guys? A lot of stuff tonight. Was this useful for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, think you'd
Very
be
useful.
okay. Any other questions?
I have a silly question.
I have a quick comment.
What do you got?
A while back, I did this with my husband because he was He had rotator cuff surgery on his one side, and then 4 years later and no insurance, he came back and he said, I need it on the other side. Same pain, same exact, whatever. And I said, well, really stinks that we both just quit our full-time jobs, have no health insurance, et cetera, et cetera. I said, if you would like me to try this voodoo, as he called it, with you, he said, I got nothing to lose. So we did tapping and 1 round, and his, what'd you call it? SUDS? That was new to me, but I like it. The
Yeah.
rating system. I asked him to rate his pain, and he said it's 9. And we went through a round, and he's like, all right, we're done with the voodoo. It's still 9. And I said, wait a minute. On the EMO free page at the time, and I think it's all different now, but there was this thing called a reversal. You can have a reversal, and it means you're kind of like your batteries are in backwards.
Mhm.
So you go through a separate procedure with batteries incorrectly. Then we went through again, and he went from a 9 to a 4. And I'm like, it's okay. That was only 1 round. Let's do another round and get it down to 1 or 2. And he's no, I'm good with the 4. I can live with a 4. And we never, he never complained about it again. That was like 15 years ago. So now he's on board with my voodoo. We don't use it a whole lot. And there's a gal down in Australia I saw about 5 years ago who does this with oils on her fingers. Does the tapping, puts the oil on the finger, and then just goes right through and it's fast. So anyway, might be class 2 or something. I don't know. I would love to hear anybody else's experience if you have any, or if you get any after this class. I think it's an amazing technique.
My only concern with the oils on the finger, particularly getting around the eyes, depending on what oil, if that gets in the eye, that could have some really bad consequences, but why not?
Yeah, I don't know. I've not done it because I did EFT long before I did doTERRA, and I just never really mixed them. If anything, I would do EFT with oils in the diffuser. But I think she grew a really big team doing precisely that.
Yeah, there are a number of spin-offs that I'm noticing. This is one where I'd really like to try staying pure as we can. I'm thinking that after the aroma certification class, and funny that you were talking about this, because I was thinking about right before we signed on tonight, it's like, I wonder. So somebody's done it. It just hasn't appeared in the literature. Okay. Maybe we got something there.
Yeah, maybe that's something for us to dive a little deeper into.
Absolutely.
So, all right, guys, we ran over a little bit of time, but
That was my fault. Sorry.
no.
Thanks for indulging me.
You guys have some phenomenal questions, and we have a lot of information to get you guys, and know that you can reach out to us anytime that you need if you got any questions. I'm going to go ahead and